Dave Hooker Show.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app.
Download now for free.
Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Special edition of the program. We usually air weekdays at 10 a.m., but Tennessee with a big-time commitment. I'm joined by Caleb Jarreau, who covers recruiting for Off the Hook Sports and has been all on top of Emmanuel Okoye. And Caleb, Tennessee goes across the great big pond to pick up a 4-star edge rusher. Tell me about Emmanuel Okoye and his recruitment, because you got some pretty good tips throughout the week that he was headed to Tennessee, and he has confirmed that. So what can you tell me about Okoye?
Yeah, so this is an interesting pickup because Okoye just started playing football last season. Last fall was his first time playing football, but he's 6'5", 230, and at 230, he's jumping 45.5 in his vert. So he's a freak athlete. His wingspan is massive. He played basketball and soccer all his life in Nigeria, and then the NFL Academy in London saw him playing and realized, this could be an amazing edge rusher. Tight end, picked him up. He ended up becoming a 4-star by all the outlets, and he was ranked as the number 45 edge rusher by 247 Sports. He comes over the great big pond, as you said, Dave, takes official visits to several schools. And then ultimately his top 3 came down to Tennessee, Texas Tech, and Southern California. And as of about 2 minutes ago, he's a volunteer. So he'll enroll this summer and begin summer workouts because he's reclassed the class of 23.
So Tennessee has had success before with players of European descent. Konstantin Ritzman comes to mind, going back as a defensive end. And oftentimes they are a little bit raw, Caleb, and you mentioned that he just started playing football a year ago. So this is a guy who's going to have to develop. Who do you think that Tennessee's primary competition was for Okoye in landing him?
It seemed like the primary competition really was Southern California. I know he had Texas Tech in his top 3, but from what it sounded like, imagine going from London to Lubbock. Like, that change would be massive. And he talked very highly of Southern California and their coaching staff. And Lincoln Riley out there is putting an emphasis on defense. And they wanted him at edge rusher, and they kind of told him that and told him he'd get coached and, get to live in L.A., great weather. He really enjoyed that. He also took an official visit to Vanderbilt, and it was kind of interesting because he took that official visit to Vanderbilt, and then it was almost like immediately he launched his top schools without Vanderbilt in it. So he obviously didn't like Nashville, but Knoxville was always kind of trending for him even before his visit. He had talked a lot with tight end coach Alec Ablin. That's who Tennessee recruited him to play. That's where Tennessee wanted him to play originally, is they recruited him as a tight end. They wanted him to add depth to that tight end room. And then recently he said that they're recruiting him for both sides of the ball. So as an edge rusher and as a tight end, and just see where he fits quickly. And I assume he could probably get on the field quicker at edge rusher. So maybe that's part of the thinking. But I know for sure he's a big body, and with the tight end room as thin as Tennessee's right now, having him just with the ability to throw somebody out there with SEC size already, and you really just have to teach him football versus a guy who knows football where you have to add 20, 30 pounds. I feel like that's a win-win situation for the Vols.
You mentioned the 45.5-inch vertical with a 72-inch wingspan. This is a phenom type of athlete, or potentially could be. Both were the highest numbers recorded in the 2023 class, according to Yahoo Sports and 247 Sports. So he initially was a 2024 prospect, but reclassified, and now he's reclassified back to 2020. Go through the reclassification thing for me, for those that are a little bit confused, like me.
Yeah. So I think he was originally a 2024, but just being overseas and coming through the NFL Academy in London, he was able to reclass to 2023 once he saw the attention he was getting and that he could have like an immediate impact. And he really is a guy with just so much upside. Like Tennessee could tailor him to be an edge rusher. Tennessee could tailor him to be a tight end. They could teach him to do this. I mean, it's a lot easier to teach somebody how to play football than to teach somebody how to have a 72-inch wingspan and jump 45.5 inches. So I feel like Tennessee got a really good pickup here, and that as long as they get him in the film room, and I mean, he'll have a summer and fall full of football. Like if, heaven forbid a Tennessee tight end gets hurt and you need Okoye to step up into a second string, third string role, I feel like his size is already there. It's just a matter of teaching him the plays and really how, I guess, football works. Because I don't know how many games he actually played. Because you think about a high school kid, you play 4 years, 10 games a year plus playoffs. You already have 40 games under your belt. He didn't have that same experience. He only had one season. And overseas, I'm not really sure if that season was a full-size football season that you would traditionally think of. So as soon as they get him to learn football, I feel like you can stick him on the field and his athleticism will play.
Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because we're going to break down some more of prospects that Caleb has been following based off of this news of Okoye. So again, Tennessee picks up a 4-star edge rusher. We think he's listed as an athlete by some, but out of London, England, Emmanuel Okoye is the newest ball, and he will be on campus in the fall, or could he be second session of summer, Caleb, or do we know it?
He said he's going to try to get here in the summer. So with the Tennessee school schedule, I think if he wanted to, because we're still not technically done with school. So really he could still enroll for summer classes right now.
And he could always, if he couldn't get it done in the next couple of days, he could enroll for second session, correct?
Yeah, and then he'd only be 2 or 3 weeks behind everybody else. So okay. Tennessee school schedule sucks for sports like baseball, but I guess it works in this situation for football.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be the end of these guys that come over from Europe. We know that the NFL has wanted a presence in London. They have that, and it's been very well received. But I was told by a person who covered the game in Munich that it felt like a Kansas City Chiefs game, which is the closest to a college atmosphere in the NFL, that Germany absolutely loves American football. I don't think this is going to be the end of it. I don't know if Josh Heupel is going to hop on a plane and fly over regularly to Hungary or whatever, but I do think that there are going to be a handful of guys that are going to come from Europe, Caleb, and then that's going to turn into a dozen, and that's going to turn into a couple of dozen. I think you're going to see those dudes, because as athletic as Emmanuel Okoye is, there's probably not a home for him in soccer. I don't see that he would be on the soccer field.
Yeah, and I mean, really, if you just show some of the athletes overseas that it's not only soccer or basketball, like a lot of guys who are maybe a little too big for soccer or not tall enough for basketball, like you can go play American football and you'll be right at home with all the other guys who are the same size as you. And it's just a matter of learning the game. And I think the NFL Academy is big on that. And he talked about how the NFL Academy prepared him and the coaches prepared him. And he also had teammates who talked to him who had been through the process that he's going through, where, he's originally from Nigeria, but he went to London for the NFL Academy. And then he had to learn how to live in London and how to play American football. And now he's transitioning to, Knoxville, Tennessee, where he has to learn how to play college football and learn how to live in America and learn how to function in an American college system and stuff like that. So really the NFL Academy is going to be putting out these guys. And I'm with you, Dave. I bet, once one or two more Emmanuel Okoyes come out, then it'll just quadruple from there. And then I'm sure Okoye will probably go back to the NFL Academy and help some younger guys. And then it'll just create a cycle that we'll see keep happening here, because Okoye made a lot of noise with his recruitment, and a lot of people are now talking about the NFL Academy that weren't before.
No, absolutely. And another one that's mentioned, so we want to remind you that this guy's going to come in this summer or fall. So this is a 2023 guy. But one prospect that I've been asked about is another edge rusher, a 2024 guy, Camarion Franklin. Your thoughts on him? 6'5", 260-pound defensive lineman, south of Memphis at Lake Ormond High School. And he has a great size speed ratio, and I would think would be a guy that could contribute earlier than most.
Yeah, and he's a guy that Tennessee was going after heavy, still is going after heavy, and Tennessee was favored to land him for a while. And recently, it looks like Ole Miss is starting to really hammer on him and J.J. Harrell, who's a Tennessee commit right now in the state of Mississippi. Even though Cam Franklin, really, he could basically be qualified as an in-state prospect because he probably lives closer to Memphis than most places in Mississippi. But he's one that Ole Miss has been making a push for recently, and Ole Miss is getting a lot of buzz in his recruitment. Same with J.J. Harrell, another guy in-state in Mississippi. He's committed to Tennessee, and he's kind of been he's been the big peer recruiter for this class. Obviously, you have Jake Merklinger, who's your quarterback in the class, but J.J. Harrell was kind of like that big name commitment that landed, and he was being a peer recruiter in Mississippi. But recently, he's talking about how he's still taking visits, and he's starting to trend away from, I guess, talking about Tennessee all the time and start kind of courting other places, and just specifically Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. So with both of those guys, you've seen Ole Miss all of a sudden make a big push for them. So I guess Lane Kiffin's trying to keep his borders closed and keep the in-state guys in-state, specifically from Tennessee right now. But Cam Franklin is probably going to take an official visit to Tennessee. I don't know if he's got the date down for certain yet, but I'm sure he's going to take one to Tennessee. And I feel like there's some competition there, but the Volunteers are in a very good position with him. It's really just a matter of keeping Ole Miss away from getting him out of Mississippi and keeping Ole Miss away from him in Lake Foremont.
Since we're up and rolling, I want to throw some more guys at you. Again, Caleb Jarreau's been all over the Okoye situation. Go to offthehooksports.com for more. Then Peyton Lewis is a running back that I know has scheduled, I believe, a visit to Alabama. But let's talk running backs for a second. If you want to throw me some info at Peyton Lewis. And then the other one would be Jarrett Gibson. If it feels like Tennessee likes to play a lot of tailbacks, they don't really have a special one that we've seen during the fall. What are the chances Tennessee lands one or two of these guys, and would either be considered an upgrade over what Tennessee has now?
Yeah, I think we'll see Tennessee continue to recruit a lot of running backs so they don't have to play a solo running back system like you see, other schools like Alabama likes to do. But Peyton Lewis, Tennessee, right now looks like the school to beat for Peyton Lewis. He has an official visit with Tennessee scheduled for the end of June. He also has an official with South Carolina coming up in June. So it seems like a race between Tennessee and South Carolina, with Tennessee ahead right now. He's a 4-star prospect. He sits as the number 14 running back in the class, and he brings you a little bit of both. He's a speed back, but he also doesn't get tackled by the first guy. You can't arm tackle him. And the way his high school plays, it's really an offense run through him. So he's consistently running against a box that has 9-10 guys in it. So he's been able to produce against a lot of defenders running at him. The only thing with him when you watch his film is he struggles to run behind the pads, sit behind his O-lineman. He gets a little too quick and gets ahead of them. But he's a guy that Tennessee seems to be heavy on right now. Tennessee's the school to beat to land him. I'd expect a decision for him after he finishes official visits in June, and I could see him wearing orange and white for sure. And then you bring up Jarrett Gibson, who recently released his top 5 schools yesterday with Tennessee in the mix. He had Florida, Texas, Miami, and Georgia up there as well with Tennessee. So we see another one of these battles between Georgia and Tennessee, and now Florida in the mix in the SEC East. And this kid, he's an IMG Academy guy from Florida. He called Florida his dream school growing up. He's from Florida. So the Gators are obviously, even though their program is not in the best shape right now, they have an easy in with him because he's right there in Florida, and that's where he wanted to play growing up. So he's the number 1 tailback in his class right now. Steve Wiltfong of 247 Sports has him going to Texas. I think Tennessee would probably be 3rd right now in this race, but obviously after he does visits, a lot of things can change, and the Vols are staying heavy on him as well.
So Lewis is from Virginia, Salem, Virginia, and has the perfect name to be a Vol, kind of a combination between Peyton Manning and Jamal Lewis. So Peyton Lewis has the absolute perfect name. Do you think Gibson is a little bit more of a difficult get for Tennessee right now, so somewhere third in line. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I would have to. Steve Wiltfong hasn't going to Texas right now. There's so many players in this. Obviously, Georgia is really big on Gibson, and they seem to be able to get whoever they want right now. And obviously, Florida, he said, was his dream school. So you already have two SEC schools that you're competing with every year that have an edge over you in the recruitment. And then Texas is playing a big role with him as well. Obviously, picking up a guy like Arch Manning gets a lot of recruits. But then you look at Gibson with Tennessee, and he talks about how he likes the way they use their tailbacks. It's not a run-heavy offense, but it's an offense where your tailbacks get a lot of run, get a lot of play, and it also let him get out of the backfield and catch some passes as well. So Tennessee is in the mix. They have some work to do, I'd say, right here. Obviously, he's the number one running back, in the class, IMG Academy guy. But Tennessee's in the mix. They'll definitely get an official visit, it seems like. And I could see them making a run here at the end, maybe, but it's going to be a tough battle at the top.
Let's run through some more. Williams Winery, he's out of Lee Summit, Missouri, defensive lineman, 6'5", 250, 5-star guy. What can you tell me about Williams?
So he's an interesting one because we traditionally talk about Tennessee having to get in early with some of these 5-star recruits to have relationships early and kind of hope that stays through till the end. But with Williams, he visited Junior Day in January, and he got to campus on Junior Day, and it was just like everything clicked. He loved Rodney Gardner. He loved the staff. And so ever since then, he's had Tennessee on his radar, and Tennessee has picked up their recruitment of him as well. So it seems like Oklahoma is the school to beat for him right now. Obviously, a defensive lineman going to play for Brett Venables in the Midwest makes sense. But he's a 6'5", 250-pound guy. He really liked Rodney Garner, really liked Tennessee when he visited. He's the number one defensive lineman in this class. The Vols are going to get an official visit here more than likely. And I could see Tennessee making a run late. It's just really cool to watch that, or fun to watch. Like, he came to campus in January, and nobody had been talking about him. And then all of a sudden he looks around and he's like, hey, this place is nice. Like, I love the coaching staff. I like what we have going on here. And he kind of clicked from there. So we see Josh Heupel probably using his Missouri connections here a lot too, with some of these Missouri kids to kind of get in early with their recruitment and make some connections, have some relationships there.
Ryan Wingo out of Missouri, there's a Missouri theme all of a sudden. And Tennessee can go into Missouri and say, your state school has a goofball as a head coach. How much does that help them?
Yeah, I mean,
they do. I mean, Eli.
Just pull up the SEC standings, and
yeah.
I mean, unless they're signing in state for NIL money at a high school, then they really have nothing going for them there.
But for some reason, Ryan Wingo has been a fan favorite. Tennessee's chances of landing him are?
They're going down.
Okay.
So it seems like Ryan Wingo is starting to get on that Georgia train and go and visit Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, start to go with those schools. So he expects to visit Tennessee multiple times. Tennessee was the team to beat at one point. Now I'd probably say Georgia is the team to beat. He's the number 5 wide receiver in the class. But as the St. Louis High School, Missouri prospect goes down on Tennessee's radar and chances of landing him, 5-star wide receiver Mike Matthews is going up from Georgia. He's his favorites right now look like to be Clemson and then Southern California. And all of a sudden, Tennessee has entered that mix as well. He's a two-way guy that would probably play receiver for Tennessee. And he was at the Alabama game when they upset the Crimson Tide in Neyland Stadium, got to charge the field. He's a 5-star guy as well. Georgia and Alabama are in the mix for him, but they probably got in a little too late, it seems like, with him. And it's almost like they're 5 stars. They're going after the top 10 recruits in the class, and Matthew sits right outside of that. He's a lower 5-star, closer to a 4-star. So a lot of attention between Matthews and Tennessee right now. I could see him becoming a Vol before I could see Ryan Wingo. It seems like right now Wingo has been trending away, and just seems to be probably going to end up at Georgia with other 5-star prospects.
It's funny to talk about Matthews. You would think Georgia would have the inside track, but this may be Tennessee's opportunity to shoehorn guys into Tennessee because he plays wide receiver, which obviously Tennessee has success with wide receivers. So you plant those seeds, you get a couple of receivers that maybe Georgia wants because they're going to put up bigger numbers at Tennessee, and suddenly they've got friends that end up at Tennessee as well. So I find that that pretty interesting. Linebacker Sammy Brown. What can you tell me about Sammy?
Yeah, so this one's kind of unique as well because Tennessee, his favorites right now are Clemson and Georgia, but Tennessee's been in the mix. His mom is from East Tennessee, and he has family in Knoxville as well. So it's kind of kept him in the mix, kept him in the loop at Tennessee. He's been to campus several times. He has officials scheduled with Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State. He'll be in Knoxville this weekend or next weekend, Memorial Day weekend, taking his official visit. So he's a guy that Tennessee's in the mix with because he has family here. Maybe if the other schools don't play their cards right, then he could end up a Vol. He's Tennessee really likes him. He likes Tennessee, it seems like. There's a lot of mutual interest there. And you kind of see this in recruiting a lot. You look at Dylan Raiola. He had the family connection, just five-star number one player, just committed to Georgia. He had the family connection in Nebraska, kept Nebraska in the loop. Seemed like he was going to Nebraska at one point, which is crazy for a five-star number one prospect right now. And then he ends up at Georgia anyway. So Sammy Brown also has family in Knoxville. Tennessee is going heavy on his recruiting, rolling out the red carpet, and we could see we'll see what happens after he visits in the coming weeks.
So Tennessee has a guy named Nico on campus. We are always thinking about the next guy, and George McIntyre out of Nashville is obviously on Tennessee's radar, Brentwood Academy, and I hold no ill will to Brentwood for beating my Powell High School Panthers in 1992 in the state finals. But here's a 6'5" guy out of Brentwood Academy. I've watched some tape of him. I think he just has great fundamentals. I like the way he gets the ball out. He's one of those guys you can tell has been trained by a quarterback coach, either his high school coach or maybe he gets training outside of that. But your thoughts on McIntyre? Any insight you can give us to him?
Well, you talk about how he just looks like a football player. He's from a football family. His uncle coaches at FIU, formerly at Colorado. His late grandfather was the coach at Vanderbilt forever. So his family's a football family. They have football connections. He's a five-star quarterback from Brentwood Academy, a Tennessee guy. He's one of the guys where Josh Heupel locking down Tennessee's borders are probably more important than ever. You also see Josh Heupel wanting a quarterback in every class. So obviously you have Jake Merklinger in this 2024 class committed, Nico in the last class. So McIntyre could be that guy in the next class. It seems like Tennessee is the team to beat for him right now. And the big schools are kind of getting in late. Luckily for Tennessee, he was in Nashville, and Tennessee has connections. You know, Lipscomb Academy, Brentwood Academy, those Nashville schools that produce a lot of D1 talent. So Tommy Rees got in late from Alabama. I know that for sure because they just offered him recently. And Josh Heupel, why wouldn't you want to play quarterback in his offense? So we talked about it earlier with wide receivers. I think that offense just recruits itself. And when you have a connection with a kid, he's an in-state kid, he's a football kid, and you offer him a spread offense where he can throw the ball around, I think you'll see a lot of success.
Great stuff. Unparalleled, unbiased coverage off the hooksports.com, and it's free. So support the advertisers and the sponsors that you see on offthehooksports.com. Again, great stuff. So Tennessee, to go back to where we started, picks up a 2023 edge rusher in Emmanuel Okoye, just started playing football last year and has a 45.5-inch vertical, and just seems like he could be a diamond in the rough, so to speak. He needs some polishing for sure, but it looks like he could be a special sort of player out of London, England. So continue to follow recruiting. Great job, Caleb Jarreau. Threw a lot of names at you, and you brought the info. Also, one of the things we want to bring to you that Caleb just did is we'll give you our honest opinion where guys are headed. So I don't think you always get that out there. So fantastic job. Any other announcements or commitments that are forthcoming, Caleb? Or June's going to be a big month, my man.
Yeah, June will get crazy. I think you're kind of down for a little bit. Memorial weekend, they'll have a lot of visits, and we'll have some more news rolling out.
Am I allowed to take a vacation with my family during June, or are we going to have to do this?
I guess there's only one way to find out.
Yeah, here we go. He's embedded. He's a man. Caleb Jarreau. I'm just Dave Hooker. This has been